we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. As you know, the Russians launched their major offensive operation, and now it's clear that the Russians are trying to establish complete control over the city of Pokrovsk and the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. So that is why the Russians began bombing and attacking the territory of Ukraine massively with drones and missiles. And this is the only reason why the Western countries began sending as many as possible weapons and arms to Ukraine, obviously to stabilize the situation. So the Russians, during the previous nights between the 18th and 19th of July of 2025, launched another massive missile and drone attack all over the entire territory of Ukraine. And here we can see the map of approximate routes of attacks. And this is very interesting attack, as you can see, because since May the Russians were trying to attack just one area, just one city or one part of Ukraine. For example, the Russians attacked either the city of Kiev, just the city of Kiev, or let's say the western part of Ukraine, or let's say just the city of Odessa, or let's say the Russians attacked just the city of Dnipro. But when talking about this attack, we see that the Russians attacked almost 60% of Ukraine. There is just one area that the Russians didn't attack. We're talking about the western part of Ukraine. So anyway, let's talk about this map once again. As you can see, there are just three areas of concentration of fire. The city of Zhytomyr, which is located to the southwest of the city of Kiev, the city of Odessa, that is located in the southern part of Ukraine, and the settlement of Pavlograd, that is located in the eastern part of Ukraine. There are obviously more explosions, but I believe that, let's say, explosions in the area of the city of Kiev, Shostka, Poltava, Kharkiv, or the city of Dnipro were just explosions when the Russians were trying to destroy Ukrainian air defense systems, to suppress them, and with the purpose to allow, let's say, main areas of this attack to be attacked. Simply saying. So let's discuss this in details. The Ukrainians later reported that the Russians used 379 air targets. We're talking about missiles and drones altogether. The Ukrainians are saying that they managed to destroy almost everything, just several missiles and several drones hit the target. But when talking about videos that we got during the previous night, obviously the Ukrainians are telling probably a bit not correct numbers. For example, this is the video from the city of Odessa, and here we can see the consequences of attack. Lots of buildings, facilities, warehouses and ammo depots were damaged and destroyed. We can see a secondary detonation. It seems that the Russians were trying to destroy weapons that were sent by the Western countries with the purpose to stabilize the situation. So, and these are the pictures of consequences of the same attack. Lots of explosions, lots of buildings were damaged and destroyed. As for now, it's very difficult to say whether the Russians managed to destroy every single Western weapon in this area, but obviously some weapons were pretty damaged. This is the video from the settlement of Kamenska. We can see this explosion to the west of the city of Dnipro. Most likely when talking about this area, the Russians were trying to destroy air defense system that was protecting the city of Pavlograd. Once again, let's return back to this picture of attacks, and as you can see, according to this picture, the biggest concentration of Russian fire took place in the area of the city of Pavlograd, so in the eastern part of Ukraine. But when analyzing updates that we got during the previous nights, we haven't received almost anything about this attack. So, and this is very interesting. Why we don't see the results of this attack? It doesn't mean that the Russians didn't attack the city itself. It means that most likely the Russians managed to deal significant damage. And we understand why the Russians chose the city of Pavlograd as a primary target for their missiles and drones. And the answer is very simple, because if you can take a look at this map, you're going to see that there are lots of railways that first of all go in the direction of Slaviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka agglomeration, and there are several supply lines that go in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk, where the major battle of the summer of 2025 is taking place currently. So most likely the Russians were trying to destroy probably warehouses, ammo depots, Western weapon Ukrainian forces with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainian authorities to bring these units and to introduce them in the city of Pokrovsk or in the vicinity of the settlement. And the Russians, according to this picture, attack also the northern part of Ukraine, the city of Shostka, the cities of Kharkiv and Poltava, as I believe the Russians were also attacking just air defense systems with the purpose to clear the sky for their major attack in the direction of the city of Pavlograd. For example, this video we got from the Sumy region. We believe that this is the city of Shostka because according to the previous map, this is the only area that was attacked. So we believe that this explosion came from here. As you can see, very heavy explosion. Some ammo depot or fuel depot was destroyed. So now let's return to Ukrainian side. The Ukrainians also were trying to stop the Russians, and during the previous night they launched their own massive drone attack all over the entire territory of the western and the southwestern part of Russia. A lot of drones were moving in the direction of Moscow. A lot of drones were attacking the southern part of the Russian Federation. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation during the night were providing us reports and different analysis regarding this attack, and according to them, the Russians managed to repel this attack and almost every single drone and missile was destroyed. As for the previous night, we haven't received anything that can confirm whether the Ukrainians managed to deal damage to the territory and infrastructure of the Russian Federation. So let's return once again to the main purpose of this attack. The city of Pavlograd and Western weapon and just weapon that Ukrainians could send in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk. So now the question is, what is happening right now in the area of the city of Pokrovsk? As for another day in a row, we haven't received almost anything about the situation in the northeastern and the northern parts of this agglomeration. We're talking about the villages and cities like Rodinska, like Krasny Liman, Bylitsk, and so on. Currently, there are very heavy clashes in this area, and the situation is very difficult. The situation is so difficult that it's even very difficult to probably describe what exactly is happening here. So for better description, we have several articles and posts that were published by pro-Ukrainian resources and by those who has connections with Ukrainian soldiers on the ground. So this is the first article that was published in different Telegram channels and different comments. So let's discuss this in details. I received further information on how bad the situation in Dobropolye Rodinske is. And let me tell you, it's much worse than what public resources show. Unfortunately, I was not allowed to say anything about it, but just know that it's quite bad. So very difficult to understand where is the line of combat contact according to this post. The only thing we can say for sure that situation is quite bad. Another article was published by a source who has connections with soldiers on the ground. The Russian armed forces are trying to gain a foothold in Popov Yar. So this is the settlement, but I would like to remind you that the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village was secured by the Russians completely. Ukrainian soldiers are actively resisting, but unfortunately the village itself is lost. So some confirmation, right? But the Russian armed forces are not yet able to grab Rusin Yar. So this is the village in the same direction. We're talking about this area. Some part of the settlement is in contested zone. Fighting continues in Yablunovka, and it is difficult to say how long they will be able to hold off the Russian armed forces there. The zone of control there is already minimal, up to 10% of the village. So this is the situation in Yablunovka, and I would like to remind you that this article that we just read was partially confirmed by Deep State. They made additional changes on the ground, and according to latest changes published by Deep State, Ukrainians lost control over the central part of Yablunovka, and currently they're trying to resist in the most eastern part. As you can see, according to this author, it is very difficult to understand how long they will be able to hold. The next statement. In the direction of Alexandra Kalinova, there was another advance of the Russians who have already reached the outskirts of this important village. So this is the settlement, and we have some adjustment during the previous days. Fighting continues near Novoekonomichesky, and the situation of this extremely important village is very difficult. So it seems that these upcoming days, maybe in 2, 3, or 4 days, we're gonna receive first videos and first geolocations that will change the situation in this area. We're talking about map adjustments significantly. It seems that every single village in this pocket would be taken by the Russians within a week, and the weapons that Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian contingent was expecting from the city of Pavlograd during the previous night was destroyed. This can lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian defense and to a breaking moment, a turning point in the battle for the agglomeration itself. If everything continues developing this way, the same way, it seems that the Russians would be able to establish control over this agglomeration within the next 50 days or even less. Now let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians also continue their offensive operation. There are just several settlements left before the Russians are able to secure the western border and the western part of Donetsk region. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions to the north of the settlement of Voskresenka. Several neutral mappers adjusted this territory completely in the Russian favor. Ukrainian sources, I would like to remind you, yesterday published very interesting video from the most northern part of the settlement of Voskresenka, and according to this video, Ukrainians raised two flags in the northern part of the settlement of Voskresenka and in the area of the village of Yalta. But yesterday there were lots of discussions of this video because it was very difficult to understand whether the Ukrainians restore control over both settlements or the Russians gave us wrong information when they reported about control over these territories. But later we came to the conclusion that those were just media attacks published by the Ukrainians with the purpose at least to stabilize the situation in the media. Both villages of Voskresenka and Yalta are under complete Russian controls. Furthermore, as you can see, the Russians are trying to advance in the direction of Alexander Andreevka-Klivtsova. Several neutral mappers adjusted their maps along the main road of N15 and improved their positions there. Pro-Ukrainian sources also confirmed that the Russians entered the village of Zelený Gai from the southeast, which means that the battle for this key village has started, and most likely the Russians will try to force to fall back Ukrainians in coming days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation once again in the area of Kliban-Byksky pocket, where the Russians are about to finish the battle for the southern foothold. Once again, according to different sources and according to pro-Ukrainian resources from the deep state team, the Russians secured completely the western and the central part of the settlement of Yablunovka. Currently, there are very heavy clashes already for the eastern part, but it seems that these upcoming 2 days, the entire village of Yablunovka Alexandra Kalinova would be secured by the Russians, and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further in the northern direction, which means that the Battle of Konstantinovka will begin right after. As for the southeastern part of Kliban-Byksky pocket, here we can see the same situation. The Russians are advancing, trying to secure the settlement of Sherbinovka. We believe that this village would be taken by the Russians also in coming days, which means that the battle for Katerinovka and Kliban-Byk also would start immediately after. As for the northern parts, Seversk direction, Kharkiv area, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received lots of updates, just small changes on the ground in the direction of Barova, some changes in the direction of Liman, but nothing special in comparison with the Pokrovsk direction, Konstantinovka direction, or the South Donetsk directions. Let's talk about the Volchansk area, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. Currently the Russians are trying to secure the forest to the west of the city of Volchansk, and almost every single day we got additional changes on the ground that was published by different sources. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 15th of July of 2025, and this is exactly the moment when we start receiving updates on the Ukrainian side of the river. So by the end of the 16th of July of 2025, the Russians answered the northern part of the western Volchansk and secured the most important area, the industrial zone. We have lots of geolocations that confirm confirm Russian control and the presence on the industrial area. By the end of the 17th of July, the pro-Ukrainian sources of Deep State adjusted their maps, showing additional progress on the ground in the forest. And by the morning of the 19th of July of 2025, the Russians advanced further deep inside of the forest and secured additional part. So it seems that the Russians are advancing and they are going to finish the Battle of Chansk, obviously, during the summer of 2025. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. The only probably update that worth our attention is update that was published by Deep State. And according to this report, the Russians secured the village of Yablunovka and improved their positions to the west and the southwest of Yunakivka, which means and which tell us that most likely the battle for this territory is also coming to a logical end. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel.